Shut up immediately. Who asked you, you idiot? The husband shouted at his wife in front of the guests, humiliating her once again. She stood up in silence and walked away. The guests looked at each other. And by the morning, the husband woke up and discovered the truth. His wife was gone. Her things had disappeared. And in the house, there was only silence. Dear listeners, before you is a story about a woman who found the strength to say enough to her fears and to humiliation. The evening was beginning, as all evenings usually began in a house where happiness had long ago become a beautiful lie for the neighbors. Sarah was setting the dining table, arranging the plates with that mechanical precision that comes after 15 years of marriage. 15 years during which she learned to be invisible, inaudible, non-existent. Today, they were expecting guests. David and his wife Rachel, old college friends of Aaron, were coming over. Sarah remembered the days when they all used to laugh until they cried, when Aaron would wrap his arm around her waist and introduce her with pride as the love of his life. That was in another life, one that pretty much ended when their daughter Madison was born. Madison is now 14 years old. She was sitting in her room pretending to do homework, but in reality, she was listening to music through her headphones, trying not to hear the tense silence of the house. The girl had long ago learned to sense the mood the way an animal senses an approaching storm. Aaron walked into the kitchen, buttoning his dress shirt. He was a tall, attractive 43-year-old man, with the first gray hairs showing at his temples, giving him an air of solidity. He looked at the table with a critical eye. "Did you make the shrimp cocktail?" he asked, without even looking at his wife. "Yes, of course. And the stuffed mushrooms and the pot roast are almost ready," Sarah replied quietly. "Almost," Aaron raised his voice. "They will be here in half an hour. Do you even understand that David is an important person? He is a senior executive at the firm now." Sarah pressed her lips together and kept chopping herbs. Her hands trembled slightly, not out of fear, but out of exhaustion, an endless weariness that was wearing down her soul. "Everything will be on time," she said. Aaron scoffed and walked out to the living room. He turned on the television. Sarah heard the sound of a bottle opening. He had already started drinking. By the time the guests arrived, he would be at that point where the tongue loosens and self-control weakens. The doorbell rang exactly at 8. Sarah quickly dried her hands on her apron, fixed her hair, and went to open the door. On the threshold stood David and Rachel, both impeccably dressed, radiating success and well-being. "Sarah," Rachel exclaimed, kissing her on the cheek. "It has been so long. You look great." The lie sounded so natural that Sarah almost believed it, even though she knew she looked like a tired 40-year-old woman who had stopped taking care of herself because she had stopped seeing the point. "Come in, please," she smiled. Aaron received the guests with a wide smile, shook David's hand firmly, and hugged Rachel. He was the personification of hospitality and charm. That was how friends, colleagues, and neighbors knew him. That was how he could be when he needed to be. The dinner went wonderfully. Aaron told jokes. David shared corporate stories. Rachel praised Sarah's cooking. Everything was perfect, picture perfect. Sarah sat in silence, intervening occasionally with brief comments, pouring wine for the guests, making sure the plates never stayed empty. "And do you remember, Aaron, how you and David began another story from their youth?" Sarah was half listening, thinking that tomorrow morning she had to take Madison to the doctor. The girl's stomach had been hurting for a week. But Aaron had said she was just faking it to skip high school. There were also utility bills to pay and groceries to buy. "Sarah!" Aaron called her sharply. "Are you even listening?" She startled and looked up. "Sorry, I was distracted." "David is asking about your job," Aaron said slowly, as if talking to a foolish child. "Do you still work at that pharmacy?" "Yes, as a pharmacy technician," Sarah nodded, turning to David. "And how is it there? Do you like it?" he asked politely. Sarah opened her mouth to answer, but Aaron beat her to it. What could she possibly like there? He laughed, taking a large gulp of wine. "She stands on her feet all day selling pills, although for her, that is strictly the limit of her dreams. Remember, David? In college, she barely scraped by with C's. I thought I was marrying a smart woman, and in the end, she turned out to be." He did not finish the sentence, but made an eloquent wave of his hand. Sarah felt the heat flood her face. Rachel cleared her throat uncomfortably. David stared intently at his plate. "Aaron, why are you doing this?" Sarah started in a low voice. "Why am I doing what?" He turned to her, anger spilling over in his eyes. "I am telling the truth, because it is the truth. Or do you want to say that you are some kind of ambitious woman? That you have achieved something in life? I am raising our daughter, Sarah said, trying to keep her calm. I take care of the house, the family. Oh, here is the victim. Aaron threw his hands up theatrically. Do you hear this, guys? She takes care of the family. And what is the house? Cooking, cleaning. Any maid can do that. And our daughter. Look at her. Always with a sour face, barely getting C's, just like her mother. Aaron, hasn't that been enough already? David intervened cautiously. Let's toast to the good old days. But there was no stopping Aaron now. The alcohol had loosened his tongue, and his accumulated irritation demanded an outlet. And as always, the target was Sarah. Do you know, David, what the main problem in my life is? He continued, ignoring the tense silence. I tied myself to this plain, boring doormat. I thought she would grow, that she would blossom. And what happened? She fell apart. Look at her. When was the last time she went to a hair salon? When did she buy herself a decent dress? With what money? Sarah said quietly, but clearly. You do not give me anything for myself. Everything I earn goes to Madison and the groceries. Aaron stood up abruptly. His chair screeched as it slid backward. Oh, is that so? What is this then? I don't give you anything? Whose house is this? Who bought it? Who supports this family? I work like a dog so you can have everything. And you dare to reproach me? I am not reproaching you, I only said. Shut up immediately. Who asked you, you idiot? Aaron shouted so loudly that Rachel startled and dropped her fork. Sarah went pale. Tears gleamed in her eyes, but she blinked quickly, refusing to let them fall. Not now, not in front of the guests. Though, what did it matter? They saw everything. Everyone sees it, but everyone stays quiet. Because it is easier that way. Because no one wants to get involved in someone else's family. She slowly stood up from the table and carefully folded her napkin. Excuse me, she said softly, not addressing anyone in particular, and walked out of the room. David and Rachel looked at each other. A heavy, oppressive silence hung in the dining room. Aaron sat back down, exhaled nervously, and poured himself more wine. Well, she ruined the mood, he grumbled. He cleared his throat. Always the same. She can't just keep her mouth shut, always with some complaint. Aaron, Rachel started cautiously. Maybe you were a bit too harsh. Harsh? He scoffed. That is putting it mildly. You don't know what I have to put up with every single day. She turned into nothing. A miserable whiner. Before, at least she tried. She had some interest in life. And now? She is a spineless rag. David remained silent, turning his wine glass between his hands. He remembered his wife before they got married. A bright and smiling girl. He looked at Rachel sitting next to him. Put together and confident. No, they were different. Very different. Maybe it is time for us to go, he suggested. It is getting late. Come on, why leave? Aaron tried to recover the cheerful tone. Let's have another drink. Let's remember our youth. But the magic of the evening was broken. Half an hour more of polite conversation, and the guests began to say their goodbyes. Aaron walked them to the door, assuring them that everything was fine, that these were just women's issues, that Sarah was just too sensitive. When the door closed behind the guests, he returned to the living room and began clearing the bottles from the table. Sarah did not come out of the bedroom. Aaron heard the water running in the bathroom behind the door. She was probably washing her face. He gathered the bottles, looked at the table full of dirty dishes, and felt a prick of irritation. Let her wash them in the morning. He was tired. Aaron walked into the bedroom without knocking. Sarah was sitting on the edge of the bed, already dressed in her nightgown. Her hair was down, and her face was washed. Without makeup, she looked younger, almost like the girl he had once fallen in love with. Well, are you offended? He asked, as he started undressing. Sarah stayed quiet, looking out the window. Beyond the glass, the lights of the neighboring houses flickered, where families also lived, where there were also dramas and secrets. I am talking to you. Aaron raised his voice. I hear you, she replied quietly. And now what? Are you going to pout? Going to give me the silent treatment for a week like last time? Sarah turned to him. In her eyes, there was no resentment or anger, only an infinite exhaustion. Why do you do this, Aaron? She asked. Why do you humiliate me in front of people? What have I done to you? You haven't done anything to me. He exploded. Exactly that. Nothing. You do absolutely nothing. You just exist like a piece of furniture. I work. I raise our daughter. I run the house. Shut up about the house already, Erin interrupted her. Do you have any idea how embarrassed I was today? David is a successful man. His wife is an executive. They have everything the way it should be. And I have a pharmacy tech wife. What does she look like? Like a maid. Those words hit harder than the shouting in front of the guests. Sarah felt something inside her crack. It did not break completely. That would require one more blow, but it creaked, on the verge of crumbling. Are you ashamed of me? She said slowly. Of me? The woman who gave you a child, who for 15 years, don't start. Erin cut her off, getting into bed and turning toward the wall. I am sick of your complaining. I want to sleep. Sarah sat for a while longer, motionless, then lay down on her side of the bed, being careful not to touch her husband. There were only about 8 inches between them, but it felt like an abyss. She did not sleep. She lay there with her eyes open, thinking, remembering. When did it all start going wrong? Maybe right after the wedding, when Erin started making comments, gentle at first, almost affectionate, then increasingly harsh. Or when Madison was born, and suddenly he discovered that his wife no longer belonged exclusively to him, that there was someone more important. Or maybe the problem was not a specific moment, but the fact that she endured it all. She stayed quiet, swallowed the insults, hoped he would change, that one day he would wake up and be that Erin who used to write her poems and take her to museums again. From behind the wall came a muffled sob. Madison was crying in her room. The girl had heard everything. Of course she had heard. How could anyone not hear that shouting? Sarah got up carefully and went to her daughter's room. Madison was lying with her back to the wall, her shoulders shaking. Sweetheart, Sarah whispered, sitting on the edge of the bed and stroking her hair. Mom, why does Dad treat you like that? Madison sobbed, turning to her. Her face was soaked with tears. Why does he yell at you? You don't do anything wrong. Shh. It is okay. Sarah pulled her daughter tight against her chest. Everything is fine. Adults just have disagreements sometimes. It is normal. It is not normal, Madison protested. He insults you. He humiliates you. My friends say they can hear him yelling. I am embarrassed to go to school. Sarah froze. So the neighbors hear it. Of course they hear it. The walls of their house were thin. Everyone knows, everyone hears, everyone pretends nothing is happening. Listen to me, she said, looking her daughter in the eyes. Whatever happens between your father and me, it has nothing to do with you. We both love you. He doesn't love me either, Madison said quietly. He says I am dumb, that I do poorly in school, that I take after you. Sarah nodded as her heart shrank with pain. You are smart and wonderful, she said firmly, kissing her daughter on the forehead. Do not listen to anyone who tells you otherwise, not even Dad. Do you hear me? Madison nodded, resting her head on her mother's shoulder. They stayed like that for a while longer. Then Sarah tucked the girl in, pulled the blanket up, and returned to the bedroom. Erin was already asleep, snoring. The alcohol was doing its job. He always fell asleep fast after drinking. Sarah lay down and closed her eyes, but sleep would not come. Thoughts spun in her head, each heavier than the last. She thought about Madison, about how the girl was growing up in this atmosphere of constant tension, about how she was absorbing a relationship model where the man yells and the woman endures. Did she really want her daughter to repeat her fate? She thought about herself. When did she stop being a person and turn into a shadow? When was the last time she did something for herself and not for the family? When was the last time she truly laughed? And she thought about Erin, the man she once loved. He had disappeared, vanished, replaced by this stranger full of rage who only saw her as a source of irritation. Or maybe he never disappeared. Maybe he was always like this, and before he just hid it well. During the infatuation phase, everyone tries to look their best, and then when the masks fall off, the harsh truth remains. By dawn, Sarah had not slept a single minute. She got up early, before the alarm went off, took a shower, and went to the kitchen. The dirty dishes from the night before were piled in the sink, witnesses to an evening that now felt like a turning point. She turned on the coffee maker, sat at the table, and suddenly saw her reflection in the dark screen of the turned-off television. A tired woman, with dull eyes and slumped shoulders. Was that really her? Of that radiant girl who dreamed of a great love and a happy family, only this shadow remained. The phone vibrated in the pocket of her robe. Sarah took it out. A text message from her friend Emily, who she went to college with. and whom life had since taken to another state. Hey Sarah, I know I haven't written in a while. I just wanted to say that if you ever need help, I am always here. I know a great therapist, a really good specialist, and generally, if you ever want to talk, call me anytime. Love you. Sarah read the message several times. Emily knew how. They hadn't spoken in over a year. Although in their last conversation, Sarah had mentioned that things at home weren't going great. It seemed Emily had read between the lines of what Sarah was trying to hide. She wanted to reply, but didn't know what to write. Thanks. Everything is fine would be a lie. Yes. I need help. I don't know how to keep living. Was too honest. Too terrifying. To admit even to herself. Sarah put the phone down and started washing the dishes. The mechanical work calmed her. Her hands moved on their own without requiring her mind to participate. She finished washing the last plate when Madison walked into the kitchen. Good morning, Mom, the girl said quietly. Good morning, sweetheart. Did you sleep well? Madison shrugged as she sat at the table. Her eyes were red. She had probably cried a lot after her mother left the room. Mom, she started, after a pause. Are you happy? The question caught Sarah by surprise. She stood still with the coffee pot in her hands. Why do you ask? Just out of nowhere. My English teacher said that every person has a right to happiness, and I thought, you never smile. Never. Not even when it's just you and me. Sarah set the coffee pot down, walked over to her daughter, and crouched beside her. Happiness is a complex concept, Madison. It can be different for everyone. For me, happiness is you, seeing you grow, seeing you become an adult. But that is not a real answer. Madison interrupted her with unexpected clarity. I am not asking if you love me. I am asking if you are happy. You, as a person. Sarah looked at her daughter and suddenly realized she was no longer a little girl. 14 is the age when one begins to see the world not through the rose-colored glasses of childhood, but as it truly is. No, she answered honestly. Probably not. But that doesn't mean I am miserable. It is just life. That is not life. Mom. Madison took her hand. That is existing. We learned this in civics. A person shouldn't just exist, but live, grow, enjoy things. And you are like you're dead inside. Her daughter's words sounded like a sentence. Sarah felt a lump rise in her throat. Madison, don't say that. But it's true. In the girl's voice, there was desperation. I am scared, Mom. Scared of growing up and turning out just like you. Of finding a man who yells at me, humiliates me, and I just take it. Because you take it. Because you are giving me that example. Sarah flinched, as if she had been struck. She had never thought about it from that angle. That her patience, her sacrifice, was not nobility, but a lesson for her daughter. A lesson on how not to live. I do not want you to repeat my mistakes, she whispered. Then do not repeat them yourself, Madison said with wisdom beyond her years. Please. At that moment, Aaron walked into the kitchen, unshaven, wrinkled from sleep, with a sour expression on his face. He walked to the refrigerator without even saying good morning. Where is my blue dress shirt? He asked, taking out some orange juice. In the closet. On the hanger, Sarah answered, standing up from the floor. Why isn't it ironed? I ironed it the day before yesterday. It is hanging on the right side. Well, go get it and bring it to me. Aaron snapped with irritation. Or do I have to do everything myself? Sarah looked at him, then looked at Madison, who was sitting with her head down, and suddenly felt an unbearable shame. Shame for herself for allowing herself to be treated this way. Shame in front of her daughter who saw everything and drew conclusions. Go get it yourself, she said quietly. Aaron turned around, not believing his ears. What did you say? I said, go get it yourself. Sarah repeated a little louder. You have hands. You have legs. The closet is not in another state. Have you lost your mind or what? Aaron took a step toward her. After yesterday, you still dare to talk back? After yesterday, Sarah straightened up, looking him in the eye. I realized a lot of things. And I am not going to tolerate this treatment anymore. Ah, of course. That's it. Aaron let out a laugh, but it was a cruel laugh. Mutiny on the ship. Look at you, a feminist. Let's see. Tell me, how are you not going to tolerate it? Are you going to leave? Where to? On your pharmacy tech salary. Rent a room in some shady part of town. Sarah stayed silent, but in her gaze there was something new. A spark that would not go out even under the pressure of his rage. Right. Aaron nodded with satisfaction. You're quiet because you understand that without me, you are a nobody, and always have been. So get this through your head. I am in charge here, and it will be how I say." He turned around and walked out of the kitchen. A minute later, the front door slammed. He left for work without breakfast. Madison looked up at her mother, her eyes full of tears. "Mom, is everything okay?" Sarah hugged her daughter. "Everything is going to be okay, I promise." She did not know how she would keep that promise, but she knew one thing. Something had to change, immediately. After dropping Madison off at high school, Sarah returned home and sat down at the computer. She opened the browser and began searching for information about women's rights in a divorce, how marital assets are divided, whether it is possible to keep the house when there is a minor involved, and about psychological help for victims of domestic abuse. Domestic abuse. She had always thought abuse meant bruises and broken bones, but now she understood that the yelling, the humiliation, the constant pressure were also psychological abuse, and its scars did not stay on the body, but on the soul. She read stories of other women similar to hers, sometimes even more terrible. She read advice from therapists and lawyers, and with every line she read, her determination grew stronger. You cannot keep living like this. You cannot, for the sake of an illusory stability, destroy yourself and damage your daughter's mental health. During her lunch break, Sarah called Emily. "Hello? Sarah, is that you?" Her friend answered with surprise. "Yes, it's me." "Emily, do you remember you messaged me about a therapist? Can you give me her contact info?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. Sarah heard Emily take a deep breath, as if preparing for an important conversation. "Of course. Absolutely." Her friend started talking quickly. "Sarah, I am so glad you called. I have wanted to talk to you for a long time, but I was afraid of overstepping. But the last time we spoke, I knew something wasn't right with you." "Nothing is right," Sarah confessed quietly, feeling her voice betray her with a tremble. "Nothing at all." "Sarah, honey, listen to me," Emily said softly but firmly. "I know how this goes. My sister went through something similar. She also thought she just had to endure it, that it was her fault, that she wasn't trying hard enough. But you know what? When she finally left that man, it was like she was reborn. Yes, it was hard at first. Yes, she had to start from scratch. But she became happy. You don't understand. Truly happy." Sarah listened with the phone pressed to her ear, tears streaming down her cheeks. She had held it in for so long, she had pretended for so long that everything was fine, that now, hearing words of support, she could not hold back. "I am scared, Emily," she whispered. "I am 40 years old. I have a teenage daughter. I have a small salary. How can I start a new life?" "The same way everyone does," Emily replied. "Step by step, with little steps. First, talk to a therapist to understand what is happening, to find your strength, then a lawyer to know your rights, and then you take action. I am with you. I will help you with whatever I can. I have connections who can guide you, advise you. You are not alone. Do you hear me?" "Thank you." Sarah wiped her tears. "Thank you." They spoke for about 10 more minutes. Emily gave her the contact information for Dr. Susan Carter, who specialized in family issues and worked with victims of domestic abuse. Sarah wrote down the phone number and address, promising to call. After the conversation with Emily, she felt something new, not exactly hope, but something close to it. As if in a dark, sealed room, a thin sliver of light had appeared under the door. That evening, Aaron came home in a better mood. He even said hello, which was already progress after their morning argument. Sarah set the table, called Madison for dinner, and the three of them sat down. A normal family having a normal dinner. "How was your day at work?" Sarah asked, passing Aaron a plate of meatloaf and mashed potatoes. "Normal," he replied briefly. Miller had trouble with the spreadsheets. I had to help him sort them out. "And you, Madison, how was school?" "Good." The girl avoided looking at her father. "I got the highest grade on my English essay." "Good job," Aaron nodded, and Sarah saw Madison's face light up. The daughter heard praise from her father so rarely that any kind word was a treasure to her, and that broke Sarah's heart. Understanding that her daughter was starving for paternal attention, for his approval, that Madison was willing to rejoice over crumbs because she did not know it could be any different. The dinner went by peacefully. Aaron even told a couple of stories from work, and Sarah caught herself thinking that in those moments, he still resembled the man she had fallen in love with. But those flashes were becoming rarer. and the periods of anger and irritation longer and longer. "Hey," Erin said when Madison went to do her homework. "About yesterday. Well, maybe I crossed a line. It's just that there's a lot of stress at work and I boiled over." It was the closest thing to an apology he was capable of giving. Before, Sarah would have accepted it. She would have been glad the conflict was settled. But now, she stayed silent, looking at him. "Did you hear what I said?" Erin frowned. "Are you going to pout again?" "I heard you," Sarah replied. "Erin, we need to talk." "Seriously." "About what?" "About us. About our family. About what is happening." Erin leaned back against his chair, crossing his arms over his chest in a defensive posture. "Nothing is happening. This is normal family life. Everyone argues. Everyone makes up. These aren't arguments, Erin. It is constant humiliation. You yell at me, you insult me, you say I am worthless. In front of our daughter, in front of our guests, in front of the neighbors who can hear everything through the walls. Here we go again." Erin stood up from the table. "I thought we had a peaceful dinner, and you're back on this again. You always ruin everything." "I ruin it?" Sarah stood up as well. "Me? And who else? I try, I make money, I support this family, and all you know how to do is complain and criticize." "I am not complaining." Sarah's voice rose, and she surprised herself. She rarely allowed herself to raise her voice. "I am saying that our family is falling apart, that our daughter cries at night, that I can't remember the last time I felt like a person and not a maid." "A maid?" Erin took a step toward her, his face contorted with anger. "You consider yourself a maid? Well, you are free to go. Leave. Live however you want. We will see what tune you sing without my money, without this house. I might just leave." It slipped out of Sarah before she could think about it. Erin froze. He clearly did not expect that response. Normally, Sarah got scared by his threats, started calming him down, apologizing, but not this time. "What did you say?" he pronounced slowly. "I said I might just leave," Sarah repeated, feeling her heart racing wildly. "I might actually be better off alone than with a man who doesn't respect me, doesn't value me, and doesn't love me." "Doesn't love you?" Erin smiled mockingly, but something resembling fear flashed in his eyes. "I dedicated my whole life to you. I married you, had a child with you, bought a house. That is not love according to you. That is an obligation," Sarah said quietly. "But not love. Love is when you do not humiliate a person, when you care about their feelings, when you see them as a human being and not a thing you can boss around. Have you learned how to deliver smart speeches?" Erin turned away. "Have you filled your head with your women's magazines, or did your friends put ideas in your head?" "Emily, I bet, always was a harpy. Emily is a good person who actually cares about me, unlike my husband." "Oh, so that's it." Erin turned back. "Then I am a bad husband. Fine, go ahead, list my sins. I don't drink until I pass out. I don't hit you. I bring money into the house. What more do you want?" "Respect," Sarah answered simply. "Just respect, and to be treated like a human being." "Respect has to be earned," Erin yelled. "And what have you done to make me respect you? You're at your pharmacy making a pittance. At home you walk around in an old robe. Look at Rachel, David's wife. Now, that is a woman. She takes care of herself. She has a career. It is interesting to talk to her. And you. And I." Sarah felt something inside her break definitively. "I am not going to listen to this anymore." She turned around and headed for the bedroom. "Where are you going?" Erin yelled at her back. "I am talking to you." "The conversation is over." Sarah tossed over her shoulder and shut the door behind her. She leaned her back against the door, breathing heavily. Her hands were shaking, her temples pounding, but inside, beneath the fear and the agitation, there was a new strength. She had finally said what she thought. She had finally not swallowed the insult. She had not stayed silent. Behind the door, Erin yelled something else. Then the front door slammed. He left, probably to see friends or to a bar. He always did that after fights. Sarah took out her phone and looked at Dr. Susan Carter's number. Tomorrow she would call and make an appointment. That would be the first step. She opened the closet and pulled out an old duffel bag. Then she started putting clothes inside, hers and Madison's. Not everything, just the bare necessities. She didn't know exactly what she was going to do, but she wanted to be prepared. There was a soft knock on the door. "Mom," Madison's voice came through. "Come in, sweetie." Madison walked in and saw the open bag. the clothes carefully folded. Her eyes went wide. We are leaving? Sarah sat on the bed and patted the spot next to her. Madison sat down, and Sarah took her hand. I don't know exactly what will happen next, she said honestly, but I want you to be prepared just in case. If we have to leave, we will leave quickly. Do you understand? Madison nodded, and tears appeared in her eyes. And where will we go? First to Aunt Emily's house. She lives in another state, remember? She has a big house and lives alone. She said we could stay with her until we find our own place. And Dad? Sarah sighed heavily. Dad? We will probably live apart from Dad for a while. We might get a divorce. I haven't fully decided yet, but the way things are now, it cannot continue. Madison stayed quiet, processing what she had heard. Then, suddenly, she hugged her mother tightly, desperately. I was afraid you would never make up your mind, she whispered. I was so afraid we would keep living like this forever, that you would take it and I would have to watch it and go crazy. Sarah stroked her daughter's hair, holding back her own tears. How had she not understood earlier how much all this was affecting the girl? How could she have been so blind? Forgive me, she said. Forgive me for not being able to take this step for so long, I thought. I thought for your sake I had to keep the family together, that a child needs both parents, even if everything between them is awful. No, Madison pulled back and looked her mother in the eyes. I don't need a family like that. I need a mom who doesn't cry at night, who smiles, who lives and doesn't just exist. Those words, almost a literal repeat of what she said in the morning, sounded like a manifesto. Sarah nodded, wiping her tears. Then we will do it, she said firmly. But for now, not a word to Dad. You understand? He must not know what we are planning. Otherwise, there will be a scene, and he might stop us from leaving. I understand, Madison nodded seriously. I will act like normal. They stayed together for a little while longer. Then Madison went back to her room to finish her homework, and Sarah hid the duffel bag in the back of the closet, under the winter clothes. Aaron came back late, past midnight. Sarah heard him walk to the bathroom with unsteady steps, then drop onto the bed. He smelled like beer and cigarettes. He tried to hug her, but Sarah pulled away. Don't be mad, he mumbled sleepily. I didn't mean it in a bad way, it just happens. She didn't answer, remaining completely still until his breathing steadied and he fell asleep. Then she lay awake for a long time, staring into the darkness, planning her next steps. In the morning, Aaron acted as if nothing had happened. As he got ready for work, he even kissed Sarah on the cheek. A formal, cold kiss, more out of habit than feeling. As soon as the door closed behind him, Sarah dialed Dr. Susan Carter's number. Hello, this is Susan, a calm female voice answered. Good morning, my name is Sarah. Emily Miller gave me your number. I would like to schedule a consultation. Of course, Sarah. Briefly tell me what is troubling you. Sarah hesitated, searching for the words. I am having family issues. My husband puts psychological pressure on me. He humiliates me. I cannot keep living like this. But I don't know the right way to act. I understand. Susan's voice was warm, non-judgmental. You are already very brave for calling. That is the first step and a very important one. Tell me, is there a risk of physical violence? No, he doesn't hit me, but he yells at me, insults me, humiliates me in front of other people. That is also abuse, Sarah. Psychological abuse is no less destructive than physical abuse. Sometimes, it's even more so. I have an opening today at 6:00 p.m. Could you come in? Sarah did the math quickly. She finished her shift at 5:00. Would she make it in time? Yes, I can. Thank you very much. She wrote down the address and hung up. Her hands were shaking, but it wasn't weakness. It was the excitement of something new, unknown, but necessary. At work, the day dragged on painfully. Sarah served customers at the pharmacy, dispensed medications, gave advice, but her mind was far away. She replayed the conversation with Aaron over and over, the events of the last few days, and each time she became more convinced that she had made the right decision. During her lunch break, she went to the Bank of America across the street and opened an account in her name, separate from their joint one. She transferred all her secret savings there, a sum she had secretly saved over the last 2 years. About $2,500, money for a rainy day. Although earlier she had never imagined that day would come so soon. At exactly 6 o'clock, she was standing in front of the office door with the plaque. Dr. Susan Carter, psychologist. She took a deep breath and knocked. Come in, a voice called from inside. The office turned out to be small but cozy. Soft lighting, a comfortable armchair, a box of tissues on the table, and a pitcher of water. Susan greeted her with a smile. She was a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and a calm demeanor. "Hello, Sarah. Take a seat, please. Make yourself at home." Sarah sat down, clutching her purse in her hands. "I don't even know where to start." "Start with what brought you here." "With the most important thing," Susan suggested gently, and Sarah began to talk, hesitantly at first, stumbling over her words, then with increasing fluency. She spoke of 15 years of marriage, of how Aaron slowly changed, how at first it was small reproaches, then criticism, then open insults, how she lost herself piece by piece until she became a shadow, of her daughter growing up in an atmosphere of constant tension, of the night he humiliated her in front of the guests. Susan listened intently, sometimes nodding, sometimes asking clarifying questions. She didn't judge, she didn't give advice, she simply listened. And that was exactly what Sarah needed. The chance to finally speak, to vent, to release everything that had built up over the years. "Sarah," Susan said when the story ended, "I want you to understand one very important thing. What is happening in your family is not your fault. You are not responsible for your husband behaving this way. His behavior is his choice, his responsibility." "But I am not perfect either," Sarah objected. "Maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe I didn't try hard enough." "There is no amount of effort that justifies humiliation," Susan said firmly. "No one has the right to treat you the way your husband treats you. It doesn't matter what his excuses are, stress at work, exhaustion, whatever, that does not give him the right to insult you." Sarah felt her chest tighten. Tears rose to her throat. "I took it for so long," she whispered. "I thought I had to keep the family together for my daughter. That being a divorced single mom was a stigma, that I couldn't make it alone. And what do you think now? Now I think it is better to be divorced but alive, than married but dead inside." Susan smiled. "That is a very important realization. You have already taken a huge step just by coming here. Tell me, do you have an action plan?" Sarah talked about her conversation with Emily, that she had started packing their things, about the bank account. "Very good," Susan nodded approvingly. "You are doing the right things, but I would advise a few more steps. First, consult with a family lawyer. Learn your rights in a divorce, how the assets will be divided, how to set up child support for your daughter. Second, gather your documents. Your ID, your daughter's birth certificate, your marriage certificate, the deed to the house if you have access to it. Third, as much as possible, document the psychological abuse. How do you do that? You can record his insults on your phone. You can ask witnesses for statements. For example, the guests from that dinner party. That can help in court if it goes that far." Sarah nodded, writing everything down in a notebook. The to-do list was growing, but strangely enough, that didn't scare her. It calmed her. Concrete actions, concrete steps. That was better than spinning her wheels helplessly in the same spot. "And one more thing, Sarah." Susan leaned forward, looking her in the eyes. "Be prepared that when you announce your decision, his reaction could be unpredictable. Some men become aggressive when they realize they are losing control. Others, on the contrary, start swearing their love, promising they will change. It is important to remember that people only change if they want to and put the work in themselves. Promises in a moment of crisis rarely mean anything." "I understand," Sarah nodded. They spoke for another half-hour, and when Sarah walked out of the office, she felt as if she had been reborn. For the first time in many years, she had clarity. She knew what to do next. The following days passed in meticulous preparation. Sarah booked an appointment with a lawyer, who explained the divorce procedure and division of assets in detail. It turned out she was fully entitled to half the house. It was purchased during the marriage and was marital property. Aaron couldn't just throw her out on the street. Secretly, she gathered the documents, made copies, and mailed them to Emily for safekeeping. She talked to Madison, preparing her daughter for the changes ahead. And all that time, she acted normally with Aaron. She cooked, cleaned, didn't argue. He even commented that she had become more calm. In reality, it was the calm before the storm. On Saturday, Aaron invited the same guests over again, David and Rachel. Sarah agreed, although inside her stomach nodded at the thought of a repeat of the previous evening, but she understood it could be her last chance to get witnesses to document his behavior. The evening started out calm. Sarah set the table, and Aaron greeted the guests with his usual cordiality. David and Rachel seemed a bit tense. Apparently, the memories of their last visit were still fresh, but they tried to act natural. During dinner, Aaron was surprisingly pleasant. He joked, told stories. He even praised the dishes Sarah made a couple of times. She sat in silence, observing him and thinking about how skilled he was at putting on masks. To others, he was a charming, successful man and an attentive husband. Only she and Madison knew the truth. But as the wine bottles emptied, Aaron began to change. His voice grew louder, his gestures wider, his gaze heavier. "Do you remember, David, back in college, when we were both chasing the same girl?" He laughed. "What was her name? Caroline, I think." "I think so," David smiled uncomfortably, glancing sideways at his wife. "She was a knockout," Aaron continued. "Long legs, spectacular body. Not like now." He looked pointedly at Sarah. "With the years, everyone fades a bit." Sarah pressed her lips together but stayed silent. "And Madison?" Rachel cleared her throat, changing the subject. "How is she doing in high school?" So, Aaron dismissed it. "Barely gets C's. Takes after her mother. I thought I would have a smart, capable daughter, and she turned out to be just another average nobody." "Aaron!" Rachel was indignant. "How can you talk about your own daughter like that?" "What?" Aaron poured himself more wine. "Do I have to lie and say I have an honors student? No, I am a realist. I see things as they are. Madison is a wonderful girl," Sarah said quietly but firmly. "She is kind, smart, and talented. Just because she doesn't have straight A's doesn't make her any less." Aaron turned to her. Irritation flared in his eyes. "Oh, look!" he spoke. "She found a defender. You'd be better off raising her properly instead of pitying her all the time." "I do raise her." Sarah did not look away. "Unlike you. You don't even remember the last time you talked to her about anything other than her grades." "Because I have nothing to talk to her about." Aaron's voice rose. "She is just as boring as you. Always with a sour face. Always unhappy about something. Maybe she doesn't like it when people yell at her mother and insult her." Sarah felt something she had held back for so long boiling inside her. Maybe it is hard for a girl to live in a house where her father acts like a tyrant. "A tyrant?" Aaron stood up abruptly. The chair fell backward with a crash. "I am a tyrant? I, who works like a dog to support you both. Money doesn't give you the right to humiliate people." Sarah stood up too. "Do you think just because you make money you can act however you want? Insult? Humiliate? Pressure? That is exactly what I mean." Aaron pointed his finger at her. "You are ungrateful. You always have been. I gave you everything. A house, a family, stability. And you only know how to complain and whine." "I am not complaining. I am stating facts." Sarah's voice was ice cold. "You are an emotional abuser. You are destroying my personality, our daughter's self-esteem, turning our home into a place we are terrified to come back to." "Abuser?" Aaron burst into laughter, but the laugh was cruel. "She even learned the terminology. Probably got it off the internet, right? Feminist garbage teaching you to blame men for everything." "Aaron, isn't that enough?" David tried to intervene. "Let's calm down." "Shut up," Aaron roared at him. "This is my family, my house. I make the decisions here." "No," Sarah said quietly. "But clearly, you don't make the decisions anymore." And suddenly, before she could stop herself, the words poured out on their own. "I am leaving you, Aaron. I am filing for divorce." Silence fell. Sarah herself stood perfectly still, surprised by what she had just said. That was not in the plan. She had meant to leave quietly at night, with no scenes or explanations. But years of silence exploded in a single instant, and now there was no turning back. "Then we leave today," crossed her mind right after dinner, before he can react. "And do not even try to stop us," she added more firmly. "I know my rights." Aaron's face slowly began to turn red. David and Rachel sat there, not knowing where to look. They clearly did not expect to witness a scene like this. You wouldn't dare," Aaron growled. "You are not going anywhere. You have no money. You have no housing. Your job is a joke. You will die without me." "Maybe," Sarah nodded. "It might be hard for me. I might have to start from scratch. But you know what? I would rather live in a rented room with peace in my soul than in this house with constant fear and humiliation." Aaron stayed quiet, breathing heavily, his fists clenched and unclenched. Sarah watched the emotions cross his face. Anger, disbelief, fear. Yes, fear. For the first time, he realized she was serious. "You're bluffing," he finally said, but his voice sounded insecure. "You just want to scare me. You make a scene in front of our guests so that I—" "What? So I apologize? So I start begging you?" "No, Aaron." Sarah shook her head. "I am not bluffing, and I do not need your apologies. It is too late. Way too late." "Too late?" He took a step toward her, and Sarah instinctively stepped back. David stood up, ready to step in if necessary. "We have been married for 15 years. We have a daughter. You cannot just get up and leave." "I can, and I will. Tomorrow morning." There wasn't a trace of doubt in Sarah's voice. "Why?" Aaron threw his hands up. "Over a couple of harsh words? All men lose their temper sometimes. It is normal. You are just being too sensitive. It is not about a couple of harsh words." Sarah spoke slowly, clearly, as if explaining something to a child. "It is about years of constant humiliation, about you destroying my self-esteem, about our daughter crying at night and being afraid of turning into me, about the fact that I forgot how to smile, how to enjoy life, how to feel like a person. You turned me into a maid you can boss around. But I am not a maid. I am a person, and I want to be one again." Rachel sobbed silently, dabbing her eyes with a napkin. David placed a hand on his shoulder, watching the scene with a grave expression. "Sarah is right, Aaron," he said suddenly. "What you are doing is wrong. I stayed quiet before because I didn't want to get involved in someone else's marriage. But now that it has come to this, you are behaving horribly. You do not treat a wife like that. You are against me too?" Aaron turned to his friend, a hysterical note in his voice. "Everyone is against me. I am the only one to blame for everything." "Yes," Sarah answered simply. "The one responsible for destroying our family is you." "I tried. For years, I tried to be a good wife, to please you, to live up to your expectations. But nothing was ever enough. It was always my fault. I was never smart enough, pretty enough, successful enough. And do you know what the worst part is? I almost believed it. I almost started to think that I really was worthless. But then I looked at my daughter. I saw how terrified she was of turning into me. And I realized that if I didn't stop this now, it wouldn't just destroy me, it would destroy her too." Aaron dropped into his chair, covering his face with his hands. His shoulders shook. It was unclear if he was crying or just trying to pull himself together. I didn't mean to," he mumbled. There's stress at work. I get so tired, and I come home and there are more problems, more complaining." "Everyone has stress at work," Sarah said harshly. "But not everyone takes it out on their family. Not everyone turns their home into a battlefield. It is your choice, Aaron, your responsibility. I can change." He lifted his head, tears glistening in his eyes. "I swear, I can. I will go to a therapist. I will work on myself. Just don't leave. Don't take Madison away, please." Sarah looked at him and felt a strange mix of pity and relief. Pity because he genuinely looked broken. Relief because she no longer felt responsible for his emotions. "If you really want to change, do it," she said. "Not for me, not for Madison. For yourself. Because the way you live now, you are miserable yourself. You are full of rage, always dissatisfied, always tense. You need help. But I can no longer be your punching bag while you figure out your issues. Then give me a chance." Aaron reached out to her. "A week? A month. You will see that I really will change." "No." Sarah shook her head. "I have heard those promises hundreds of times. After every blowout, you swear it won't happen again. And a week later, it all repeats. I do not believe your promises. I am sorry, but, Madison," he clung to his last resort. "Think about your daughter. She needs her father. Do you want her growing up in a broken home?" "I want her to grow up in a healthy environment," Sarah responded firmly. "And that is impossible as long as we live together. You can see her if you want. We will figure it out civilly. We will make a visitation schedule. But I will not allow you to damage her mental health the way you damaged mine." "I didn't damage anything." Aaron jumped up, going back on the attack. "You two are just too sensitive. I spoiled you. That's the problem. I should have been stricter, harsher. That is exactly why I am leaving." Sarah headed toward the door. "Even now, when I tell you I am leaving, you can't admit your fault. To you, the problem is always someone else. It's never your fault." "Sarah, wait." Aaron lunged after her, but David blocked his path. Let her go, he said quietly. Aaron, let her go. You have done enough. Sarah stopped by the bedroom door and turned around. She looked one last time at her husband, the man she had lived half her life with. The man she had loved no longer existed. Maybe he never existed. Just an illusion, a pretty picture she had created for herself. Goodbye, Aaron, she said. I genuinely hope you find help and become a better person for yourself. She walked into the bedroom and shut the door. She sat next to it, listening. From behind the door came muffled voices. David and Rachel were saying something to Aaron. He responded, his voice rising and then cracking. Sarah pulled the duffel bag she had prepared in advance from the closet and checked the documents. Everything was there. Then, she quietly slipped out the back door. The house was a single-story ranch. It wasn't hard to leave unseen. She walked around the house and tapped lightly on Madison's window. The girl opened it. Her eyes were red. I heard everything, she whispered. Mom, I am so proud of you. Grab your things. Sarah whispered quickly and quietly. We are leaving right now. But you said tomorrow morning. I changed my mind. I don't want to risk it. The Uber is on its way. Madison nodded and frantically started stuffing her things into her backpack. 10 minutes later, they were standing on the dark street with 2 bags and a backpack. The warm night breeze ruffled Sarah's hair, but she didn't notice. She only felt a strange sense of freedom, almost intoxicating. Mom, will Dad look for us? Madison asked quietly, pressing close to her mother. It's possible, but we are doing the right thing. Tomorrow I'll take you to Aunt Emily's, and then I will come back to sort everything out officially. I'll get the rest of our things and talk to the lawyer. What if he doesn't let you in the house? The house is legally mine, too. If there's trouble, I'll call the police. Sarah was surprised by her own determination. A week ago, she would never have imagined she'd be capable of doing something like this. Now, it felt natural. The Uber arrived 5 minutes later. The driver quietly helped load their bags into the trunk. Sarah gave the address for the Greyhound Interstate Bus Terminal. The overnight bus, heading to the state where Emily lived, was leaving at midnight. They were right on time. As the car pulled away, Sarah turned and looked at the windows of the house. The lights were still on. She pictured Aaron sitting with his head down, David and Rachel trying to calm him. A part of her felt guilty for leaving like this, without waiting for the morning, without explaining things calmly. But a much larger part knew she had done the right thing. An emotional goodbye. Tears. Begging. All of that would have only prolonged the pain. Mom. Madison squeezed her hand. Do you think we will ever go back? I mean, not with Dad, but just back home? That place was never a real home, sweetheart, Sarah said softly. A home is where you feel safe, where you are loved and respected, and what we just left behind was a cage. Maybe a pretty one, maybe a comfortable one, but still a cage. Madison nodded, resting her head on her mother's shoulder. I'm scared, she confessed, but at the same time, I'm happy. That is normal, completely normal. Sarah kissed her daughter on the crown of her head. Changes are always scary, but sometimes they are necessary so you can keep on living. There were few people at the bus terminal. Sarah bought 2 tickets for $40 each, and they sat in the waiting room. There was an hour left before departure. Madison rested her head on her mother's shoulder and fell asleep. She was emotionally exhausted. Sarah sat staring into space, thinking. She thought about the past, about those 15 years that now seemed crossed out of her life. No, not crossed out. They had given her Madison. They had taught her many things, even if it was through pain, but that past no longer had power over her. She thought about the future. Blurry, uncertain, intimidating. She would have to find a place to live, maybe get a new job in another city. There would be court dates, division of assets, the divorce proceedings. There would be encounters with Aaron that would undoubtedly be difficult. But all of that seemed doable. Because now, she was not alone. Emily had promised to help. Dr. Susan Carter had said she was willing to guide her even from a distance. And most importantly, she now had a goal. Not just to survive, but to live. To truly live. Her phone vibrated. A text from an unknown number. Sarah, it's David. Rachel and I want you to know we are on your side. If you need help, even testimonies for court, count on us. And I am sorry for staying quiet before. We were ashamed to admit we saw what was happening and didn't step in. We wish you luck. You are very brave. Sarah felt tears fill her eyes. She quickly replied, Thank you. It means a lot to me. Another text. This one from Emily. My girls, I'm waiting for you. The guest room is ready. The bed is made. There is food in the fridge. Get here soon. Sarah smiled. For the first time in many years, she smiled genuinely, from the bottom of her heart. The bus arrived on time. She and Madison found their seats and stowed their bags. As the bus pulled out, Sarah leaned against the window and watched the city lights pass by through the glass. The city that had been her home for 15 years and was now becoming the past. Mom, Madison called, shifting to get comfortable. Tell me about Aunt Emily. I barely remember her. Emily is my best friend, Sarah started, sitting close to her daughter. We met freshman year of college. She was so bright, so cheerful, always knew exactly what to say to lift your spirits. We were inseparable for 4 years. Then life took us to different states. She moved away for work. I married your dad. We saw each other less and less. But you know what's amazing? True friendship doesn't depend on distance. She always sensed when I was hurting. She always found a way to support me. Does she have a family? No, she isn't married. She says she hasn't found her person and refuses to settle for less. Sarah smiled sadly. Maybe she is wiser than I am. I settled for less and lost 15 years. You didn't lose them, Mom. Madison took her hand. You have me. Aren't I worth those 15 years? Sarah hugged her daughter, feeling a lump rise in her throat. You are worth everything in the world, she whispered. You are the best thing that has ever happened to me. And I will do everything to make sure you are happy. To make sure you have a different life, not like mine. I will, Madison said confidently. Because you set an example for me. You showed me that it is never too late to change your life. That you can find the strength to leave, even when it is really scary. Thank you, Mom. They stayed holding each other, listening to the quiet hum of the engine. Outside the window, the lights of small towns, dark fields, and isolated farmhouses rolled by. Back there lay her old life. And ahead was a new, unknown one, but it wasn't so terrifying anymore. Sarah pulled out her phone and opened her notes app. She started typing a to-do list for the coming weeks. Find an apartment, get a job, or transfer to a pharmacy in Emily's city. Enroll Madison in a new high school. File for divorce. Meet with a local therapist. Start taking care of herself. Go to the gym. Maybe take a class. The list grew, and that was good. Concrete goals, concrete actions. Not empty dreams, but a real plan. The bus rolled into the station at dawn. The sky was just beginning to lighten, painting itself in soft shades of pink and orange. Sarah and Madison stepped out onto the concrete platform, pulling their bags. The air here was different, fresher, lighter. Or maybe it just felt that way to Sarah because she could finally breathe with a full chest. Girls! Over here! A familiar voice called out, and Sarah saw Emily waving her arms near the exit. She had barely changed in all those years. The same dark, curly hair. The same brown eyes full of life. The same wide smile. Only the lines around her eyes were a bit deeper. But they suited her. Giving her face character, they ran toward each other, and Emily hugged Sarah tight, so tight, that Sarah felt the tears rolling down her cheeks again. Tears of relief, of joy, of gratitude. You're here. You're here. You are safe, Emily whispered, rubbing her back. I am so proud of you. So proud. Then she pulled back and turned to Madison. And you, gorgeous. You are huge. Last time I saw you, you were like 8 years old, and now you are practically a young lady. Madison smiled shyly, and Emily pulled her into a hug too. They piled into Emily's car, a small but comfortable Toyota, and headed toward her house. On the way, Emily talked nonstop, telling them about the city, her job, her home. She worked as a CPA at a large accounting firm and rented a spacious house in a nice neighborhood. I have plenty of space, she said, so don't worry. You'll have room to get settled. Sarah, 1 room for you, 1 for Madison. You'll live like queens. The house turned out to be bright and welcoming. Emily had clearly gone out of her way. On the table was breakfast, a fresh stack of pancakes, crispy bacon, and hot coffee. Fresh flowers sat in a vase. The beds were made with new sheets. Get settled. Get some rest, she said. I have to run to work. I've got a big meeting today. I'll be back by noon. There's plenty of food in the fridge. Don't be shy. The spare keys are on the console table. And oh, Emily turned to her friend. Your ex called me last night. Like 20 times. I didn't answer. Sarah nodded. Thank you for letting me know. I will turn my phone on later and see what he texted. Just don't let him put you on an emotional roller coaster, Emily warned. Right now, he will try everything to regain control. Promising, swearing, maybe even threatening. Stand your ground. I am not going back, Sarah said firmly. That chapter is closed. Emily left, and Sarah and Madison were alone. The teenager fell asleep almost immediately. She hadn't slept at all on the overnight bus. And Sarah, though she felt the exhaustion, couldn't sleep. Too many thoughts swirled in her head. She turned on her phone. 43 missed calls from Aaron, 27 text messages. She opened them and began to read. The first ones were furious. Where are you? Come back immediately. You kidnapped my daughter. I will take you to court. You will regret this. Then the tone shifted to begging. Sarah, please forgive me. I didn't mean it. I will change. I swear. Please come back. I can't do this without you guys. I can't. You know I love you both. Give me a chance. Just one chance. And the final messages were aggressive again. You are destroying our family. Madison will hate you for this. You are a nobody without me. Remember that. Sarah read them all, and then slowly exhaled. Susan had warned her exactly about this. About the manipulation tactics, the cycling between threats and begging. It was called the cycle of abuse, and Aaron was following the script to the letter. She typed a brief text. Aaron, I will make a final decision after we discuss everything calmly with a lawyer present. For now, I need time and space. I ask that you do not call or text. When I am ready to talk, I will reach out. She hit send and blocked his number. That was it. The line of communication was severed. She went into the guest room Emily had given her, lay down on the bed, and to her own surprise, burst into tears. Not from pain, but from relief. From feeling that it was all over. From knowing that she was free. After crying for about 10 minutes, Sarah washed her face, poured a cup of coffee, and sat down at her laptop. It was time to act. She opened apartment hunting websites. They needed their own place, even if it was a small rental, just their own space. Emily, of course, had said they could stay as long as they needed, but Sarah didn't want to abuse her hospitality. Next, she checked job boards. To her surprise, there were several pharmacy technician openings in the area, offering a much better hourly wage, making around $3,800 a month instead of her previous $2,200. She submitted her resume to 3 local pharmacies. The next step was finding a high school for Madison. Sarah checked school district ratings, read reviews, and narrowed it down to 2 schools in the neighborhood where they could potentially rent. By noon, when Emily returned, Sarah already had a detailed action plan mapped out for the next month. Wow, you don't waste any time, Emily marveled, looking at the list. That's exactly right. The sooner you start your new life, the easier it gets. Emily. Sarah looked at her friend seriously. I don't know how to thank you. You have no idea how much your support means to me. Hey, we are friends. Emily took her hand. And friends help each other. Remember how you supported me when my mom died? How you drove down, stayed with me? You kept me from losing my mind. I still owe you for that. You don't owe me anything, and I don't owe you. We are just here when it matters. Madison woke up in the afternoon, rested and visibly calmer. The 3 of them sat in the kitchen eating the lasagna Emily had put in the oven, and for the first time in many years, Sarah felt what a normal, peaceful evening was like, without tension, without the fear that someone would start screaming at any moment. I like it here, Madison said, smiling. It is nice here. It is safe here, Sarah corrected her. And that is the most important thing. The next 2 weeks flew by at a frantic pace. Sarah drove back to her old city, accompanied by a police officer for a civil standby, just as her lawyer had advised, and collected the rest of her belongings. Aaron didn't try to stop her, though he acted cold and distant. You're really doing this, he said as Sarah taped up the last moving box. You are destroying our family. I am not destroying it, Aaron, she replied warily. I am saving what can still be saved, myself and our daughter. And I don't deserve to be saved then? Sarah looked at him for a long time. Only you can save yourself, if you want to. But it is no longer my responsibility. She took her things, her documents, and her legal half of their shared savings, around $15,000, as the law dictated, and she left. She never went back to that house again. In the new city, everything started falling into place surprisingly well. Sarah got hired at a large, modern pharmacy with a great team. Madison was enrolled in a high school where she quickly made friends. They rented a small, two-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood for $1,400 a month. Life began to settle down. Slowly, step by step, but on a solid foundation. Sarah continued going to therapy, now with a local specialist Susan had recommended. She learned to set boundaries again, to work through the guilt that sometimes washed over her in waves. And one morning, 3 months after she left, Sarah woke up and realized she had had a dream. A normal, vivid dream, not a nightmare, not an anxious vision. She got out of bed, walked over to the mirror, and saw a woman looking back at her, a woman smiling for no reason other than the joy of a new day. And she realized it. She had started living again, truly living. That is how Sarah's story ends, a woman who chose herself. If this story helped at least one person find their strength, then it was written with purpose. Take care of yourselves. You deserve a love that doesn't hurt.